thank Robert, Robert Shine from Samco and IAgrE for taking his lunchtime out and preparing a presentation to us as members of the Institute of Agricultural Engineers and students of what Samco does and what is ongoing at the moment. So without further ado, Robert, I'm going to let it over on to yourself.
Okay. Thanks very much, Chris. Hello to everyone out there, and thanks for taking your lunchtime as much as my lunchtime to take into this, because I had my lunch already eaten, because I haven't managed to eat and talk yet, so I had my lunch first. What I'll do is, you can see the screen that's sharing. I'll do a presentation, and we can put the questions up on the board as we go along if anyone has questions, and Chris will help out with that. So for those of you who don't know who Samco is, basically we're a company in County Limerick in IAgrE, and we're kind of well known, I suppose, for developing the maize drill with the film laying and on it, and that's what our basic bread and butter is. Just a bit of history first on the whole Shine family and the whole background to the company. So my father took over the 70 cow herd back in 1978. And in 1979, 1980, he started some contracting for local farmers with a double chop and the early days of grass silage. So that business grew over the years. We started mowing and raking and getting bigger and bigger, but the biggest problem we had was maize, our grass silage, was very hard to preserve. It was very high in nitrogen, a lot of slurry in the springtime. So a lot of countries in Europe were growing maize at the time. So we started growing maize back in 91, but we found it hard to get the crop to mature every year because of the weather. So we started using this degradable film, degradable plastics that was being used in other parts of Europe for vegetable production, and we started adapting it then to use on the back of a maize drill to be able to sow the seed and lay the film at the same time. So the early days, you can see where the shovels, where we laid out the trial plots of the film, testing and so on, the different types of ideas we could do with the maize under film and what was allowing. In the early days in the contracting, you see we ran old Massey Ferguson's and Case 956s and so on. So we grew up through all that development over the years also of machinery, and that kind of led us in then to the Samco manufacturing, which we started. My own background, I'm a graduate out of Tralee in 2001. I did a diploma in ag engineering. Because we were running the contracting business at the time also, I then came back in summertime working for that, weekends, so on and so forth. And then as Samco started to grow, then I started to travel more around Europe, North America, demonstrating the equipment, testing in new areas, and just being part of the complete, say, Samco team at the time. Also then I started doing a lot of the R&D work on the 2D and later on the 3D AutoCAD systems, and worked up through the business. And as it was a family business, I'm now the managing director of the business. So my father is still very heavily involved, as is the rest of the family also. So who are Samco? So basically this is a family company. So on the picture there, my sister's on the left, brother Matthew, he looks after sales and he's the head sales and marketing manager for the company. My brother Derek then in the center, he runs the contracting business now. It's smaller than it used to be, but still it's, we do get to run out in the summertime with the wagons when we're busy. Brother Gordon then, he looks after the farm side of the business, and he also sells the seed and the film and so on in the area then to different farmers to the region for them growing maize under film. Also then you see myself, and then my father then, Sam, he's still involved in the business. So our business is basically bread and butter is the 3-in-1 machine. That's our biggest part of our business. We had a patent on it originally when it was first developed. So basically we're sowing the seed, spraying herbicide, putting degradable film over then to make a mini greenhouse. The biggest part of our business, and people don't realize it, that 80% of our sales in the company come from the degradable film. So you make the machine once, but you have to make the film every year for the machine. So 80% of our turnover is coming from the film sales, not the machine. Saying that, there's probably 90 to 95% of maize grown in Ireland is using film, and it's growing in other parts of the world too, in northern regions, northern Europe, northern Canada, and so on. So really, I suppose all our growth is coming from the film, but it's important to remember that most of our new growth is coming from R&D related projects. And that's probably the biggest part of how we're increasing our turnover, how we're getting bigger, is from new projects and new developments that we're doing within the company. So the journey, The company was formed in 1996, Samco. So from 1997 to 2007, we were mainly concentrated in Ireland, the UK, in France, Newfoundland here, and a little bit in Montreal. So they were the regions we were concentrating on for 10 years and built the business over that. Then for the next kind of 5 to 6 years then, we are having more contacts from Northern Canada, Iceland, more Northern European areas where it was cool and hard to grow maize. Also then into China, we also had a lot more contacts coming where they have a big issue with moisture retention. So they wanted to use our system to keep moisture on the ground, whereas in other parts of Europe, they wanted to keep heat in the ground. Also here you see in Northern Italy and down into Greece and areas like this where water retention became more of an issue than heat. Then there was a big growth spurt, as we say, from the 2014 to about 2019, 2020, where we really came into our own. We have a new markets in South America and Chile here, quite a good market for us in the Southern Hemisphere. So that helps us out in the off parts of the year. When we're finished production for the Northern Hemisphere, we're starting for the Southern, all across Northern Canada, all the way from Vancouver, all the way across Newfoundland. Again, cool areas where farmers are trying to grow a higher quality maize grain or maize silage. Up into Finland and Sweden, cool areas where the heat's very low in the springtime and they need to get germination. All across then into parts of Russia, Northern China, same again. And again, North Africa here becoming a bigger market for us every year due to water retention. So using the degradable film with different sowing techniques, different types of specialized equipment for drip tape, fertilizer application for the vegetable crops. And a lot of those vegetable crops in the north of Africa are actually being shipped back into Europe out of season. So it's quite a big part of the market for us in this region here. What we're planning to do for the next 5 years, you always have to have a 5-year plan. I suppose we have more contacts coming from these areas in South America and more areas in certain parts of China where we're trying to conserve moisture and use the degradable technology we have to benefit the crop more. After that, there isn't too many other places you can go with the system we have for maize under film. The range of equipment we're making for maize under film, you could call it as a 2-row machine. So small sweet corn growers, test plots, 4-row machines, up to 6-row machines, and then the big 8-row machines we have in Canada. So these are a big pull type planter, and they do 150, 180 acres a day with those type of machines in the Northern Hemisphere. But this is our bread and butter. This is what we're known for, and this is what pays the bills, as we say. Everything else is just for fun sometimes, but this is the main part of the business that is the largest, I suppose, breadwinner for us. So here's a short video just of 2 machines you'll see working here. This one here is our classic machine with their wide rows film, and this is a new machine that's been developed this year, and I'll speak about it more later as part of an R&D project. And this one is rowing narrow rows of film. So both these machines are working in the UK last week. So just a quick video for those who to give you an idea about it. But just a quick idea to give those who don't know much about the maize under film, the idea of the machine. So we're basically using a Caverneland planting unit. Anything that green in, we're developing ourselves. So we work with Hardy and other suppliers for parts on the equipment. These few slides just give you an idea. It's just not all about the machine, and hence why 80% of our turnover comes from the film. We have to do different film trials. So we have different types of film, quicker degradable, slower degradable, slotted, hold, water holes, no water holes, 0.5 meter wide, 2.2 meters wide. So all these different trial plots and different varieties that we test and trial. We built our own self-propelled unit out of Amingli, so we can weigh off all the trial plots. And it's important information so that we can go back to the growers and say this is the best type of seed variety to grow for your region or area, whether it's grain corn, silage corn, or what they'd like to do with it. So this would be a typical trial plot that we'd be harvesting in the tail end of the year. And we'd take samples and get yield analysis from it. And we'd have several of those in Ireland, several more in the UK, across France, and most of our large markets would have 4 or 5 or maybe 10 of these plots every year that we gather information and give back to the growers and the dealers that are selling the system for us. We have our own in-house laboratory because we're producing the film. We have our own UV rated machine, our own puncture test and strength analysis units. So it's a lot of in-house development work being done. We're making a 5.5 micron film, so it's quite thin. So there's a lot of things that go on with that, where the quality control and testing new types of film, new types of degradant, new resin mixes, and different types of things we do for different crops to get the best from what we're doing. I suppose bread and butter, like I spoke a few times, was our maize crop, but also then through that we have rice crops, sorghum, sugar beet, sunflowers, broad beans, courgettes, watermelons, pumpkins. There's quite a large list that can be grown using film. More and more in the last 3 years, a lot more vegetable crops starting to be grown. So in that respect, we're kind of widening what we're doing and widening the areas and customers we're capturing with that. More and more every day, look to try and use the mulch film for weed control in the organic market, water retention, like I spoke about. We don't see it in Ireland much, but it's becoming a big issue in some of the European countries, especially in the vegetable, where they rely on a lot of water at certain times of the year to fill the fruit or to fill the legume and have the quality in the crop afterwards, you know. This is just a quick video on the production with the single machine in-house, so give you an idea of the extrusion process of how we make the film. Okay, so that was just a main idea about the extruder and the process we have, and I'll go back to that later in the presentation with a few more slides of it. I suppose some of the other equipment, because we have 50 full-time staff here, we have dedicated welders, dedicated sales guys, dedicated assembly guys in the business. So we had to try and find more variable things to produce through the year as we were planning to move into our new building and new facilities. So one of the items that we have and have running now for several years, and we make these units by the dozen, are the land levelers. Quite a simple technology you'd imagine, but there's a fair bit of thought in this type of equipment, where we have on the front of the unit a digger bucket blade. So we're almost grading the soil, and by grading the soil we allow the stones, a lot of the thrash, a lot of the grass roots and so on to come into the land leveler. And at the back then with the rake unit in the back, we can control the amount of soil that flows through the unit. That coupled with a hydraulic top link, make it almost like a grader. And with that, then we can capture the stones and hold them inside and run it through the machine and dispose them in the headland or so on, or simply grade parts of the field where we want to pull topsoil from one area to the others. Earlier in my lifetime, we'd be putting rocks on top of the land levelers to try and get weight and so on, to try and grade the soil. Now it's a case of just work the hydraulic top link on the unit, and you can grade the soil and control the flow with the rake at the back. So from that, now we've gone 2 years ago to a 16-foot land leveler. Customers wanted bigger. Normally it was only a 10-foot land leveler, which was common. And we fit grass seeders to some of them, where customers want to try and land level and finish the field all the same day, rather than coming back to try and sow the grass seed afterwards with the weather breaking. So we have different attachments that we can add on to that as we require. Another machine that we kind of started work several years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago, was the subsoiler. We found with the maize crops that we had a lot of compaction in the headlands and so on from slurry being applied very early in the year. So we came up with the idea of having this heavy duty subsoiler, large pins, 50mm hinging points, 30mm plate, 30mm bolts, just real heavy, strong equipment with a lot of movement in the leg hydraulically reset left to right movement so that everything could come around the stone stuck on the ground. From that, we've developed then into other areas with harrows, discs, with the rubber roller you see in the grass version, because we found a lot of customers had issues in grassland also that maybe they didn't know about. So that aerates the soil, and it's a big issue with the amount of compaction and the heavy poaching we're getting, maybe with a lot of heavy grazing early in the springtime or late in the year, where ground is getting compacted and sealed over. So it's all about trying to open up the ground and aerate it. So we're making quite a number of these every year and exporting these to South America and Chile as well, 5-leg versions and so on, to go onto big 300 horsepower tractors for deep leg cultivation. We spoke earlier about R&D and how it's necessary and customers and so on. This unit, the carry-all, it was developed for the Canadian market primarily. We've sold them in France since that time as well, where the customer wanted to have more capacity. The fields are quite large, sowing time is quite condensed, so they want to load up in the morning and keep going for a number of hours rather than stopping to refill with water and seed and liquid fertilizer and so on. So basically, it does what it says, it's a carry-all. So we have a 3,000 litre tank on it, which allows us to do about 30 acres between refills, carries a number of rolls of film, carries the liquid fertilizer, and basically is just a 3-point linkage with a pull drawbar or a 3-point linkage on the tractor, and it attaches onto a standard off-the-shelf machine, as we say, and then it combines into a large capacity trailed unit that suits a lot of these bigger fields and bigger areas. Some customers have used it for deep leg cultivation where they're injecting fertilizer late in the year, just by removing the Samco machine and putting on their own toolbar in the end. So it can be versatile for different functions, depending what the customers want to do with it. The bag press and the crimper, this has been going on for a number of years, where we found that a lot of farmers in Ireland, not being, let's say, large, and a lot of spring calving customers who weren't feeding whole cropped wheat or maybe crimped maize grain or maybe forage maize itself in the springtime, and had an issue where they only needed a small volume per day or a small tonnage per day. So by 2 options, by having the crimper on it, we can crimp and bag direct into the bag. So we have different size bags, 1.5, 2 meter, 2.4 meter, where some guys then would put in whole crop cereals, whole crop wheat, let's say, or whole crop barley, also then forage maize. And some people would take it out of the pit after the winter and in the springtime bag it also, so they can continue to feed it through the springtime when the cows are out, let's say, for a few hours a day, and they're in by night maybe, and they want to buffer feed into the spring to try and stretch out the grass or allow the higher energy in the maize or the whole crop wheats and so on to balance with the high proteins grass that they're getting from the first grazings. So there's other versions of this equipment out there. We're the only one that can simply go to maybe do about 110 or 100 tons an hour of maize or whole crop bagging. So it's quite a high output machine. It was designed to keep up with forage harvesters, whereas the crimper then probably does from 15 to 20 tons an hour, depending on the size of crimper you have. So that would keep up with most kind of combines, or at least allow the customer to haul the grain in and feed it after. So this project especially was born out of an R&D project that we had with Enterprise Ireland. And while it's not maybe a massive seller for us, it's still a constant seller for us. And we have more and more people asking for this type of equipment from overseas, where they want to do the small grains and the large grain crops, as well as then do forage crops. So it can be used multiple times of the year at different stages of the year, and not just used for, let's say, the autumn time when the crops have been harvested. This is, I suppose, one of our biggest new innovation sellers at the moment is the punch machine, or the range of punch machines we have. This started off, like most things, I suppose, with some customer requests or new customer requests asking, could we do certain things for them with certain problems they had. And the picture on the bottom right is coming out of Italy, where they have organic rice crops. So that film is 2.2 meters wide. And they had issues with the organic rice where they sowed it too thinly to allow the air in, you get weeds. If you sowed it too early in the year to try and maximize yield potential, the weeds would grow quicker than the rice and you had more problems. So for us, by laying a black degradable film, fully compostable, this type of film is, it keeps moisture in the soil, so they can germinate earlier in the year, and they don't need the flooding or the irrigation to germinate. It keeps the weeds under control, And because all the rice is sown in tufts, it allows a lot of airspace close to the ground. So disease then became a lot less of an issue for them, simply due to the fact that the air could move around at the ground level, and because they can't use any fungicides, being organic. This helped them immensely really that way. So that's where it's one of the projects we started. You see in the top right then where it goes into like a min-till type system, where we're using it on moisture conservation in certain parts of France and so on, where they use the film here, flatten the soil with large holes, so the seed will grow through the hole, but it keeps the moisture retained under it. And then you have smaller machines like this one then used for some vegetable growers, where they'll grow a range of crops, like we spoke about, anything from onions all the way up to, let's say, melons and so on. So we could have 20 punches in the line in the circumference, or we could have 1 punch in the circumference. And then the row widths then vary depending on what crop they're sowing. So the machine can be built bespokely, or it can be built as a unit that can be added to afterwards. So we've often have customers buy 1 punch and then come back later and buy more units to add to the unit so they can grow different crops. So this is something that's taking off really in the last couple of years in countries where they want for weed control, moisture retention, and the issues they're having with herbicides being reduced. So they have to use less herbicides and they have to try and control weeds without herbicides, especially when they have a following crop of vegetables coming, where the lead time or the turnaround time might be 16 weeks from crop to crop, and they need to have a reduction in the herbicide so there's no trace going into the following crop that's coming. So it's a quick video here again, just showing the process a little bit on it. One of the latest items we have on the market this year, last year I suppose was our first year, but this year has been quite a busy year. Every day we seem to have someone asking, but they all wanted different paint colors. So we're getting very multinational with our painting colors, from Volvo to Caterpillar to JCB to Samco color to a mixture of both. So it's something that we had in the back of our minds for several years to make. There was this folding silage fork. I suppose until now in the new building, we really didn't have the space or the infrastructure to make these heavier duty items so large. So a lot of the items we have in this, all Hardox tines, we're using a lot of tube profiling. So if you were to look at the top right hand picture here, this box on top here is fully tube profiled. Same with this box and the lower box. So all the parts that are where the tines have been welded, they're not being gassed out. So the precision is very good. It's quicker and easier then for guys to be able to weld these and manufacture them, because the tube profiling on the laser is a huge help for us. Saves a lot of jigging time, saves a lot of filling time with welders, and saves a lot of grinding time. So really these were about to maximize the production time in and out and get production speed, so we could manufacture quite a large number in short periods of time. Again, to help us with our seasonality of our business, just as we finish the maize season, we need to make these very quickly because the season is so short for this type of equipment. So a lot of time and effort was spent to getting manufacturing times down and jigging times down and welding times down as low as possible for the guys on the floor. I spoke about it a few times, research and development. It's probably something that's very important to us and something we put a lot of effort into it. It's always been that way. From day one, we've been mainly doing, let's say, changes or modifications or updates to the equipment. And it's something you have to continuously do. We know things and we see things are different in every country, and a certain thing that we'd use in one country could be used back in a different country afterwards. So we're always looking at newer techniques and what we can do to improve what we have, our new projects that we can take maybe and change or adapt to suit a certain other climate or crop that we're trying to grow. There's a dedicated in-house team, so there's 3 guys, an AutoCAD inventor and doing the drawings for the equipment. After that, then for the film side of the business, then we have our own in-house lab, and we do a lot of trial work with newer resins and degradation techniques with different products. from all around the world, from companies we work in with Italy to the UK, all the way over into the USA, with different companies and technological universities on the development of different degradation techniques for the film. What's important for us is that we have to give a lot of advice afterwards to customers about the seed varieties and the film type. So that leads us then to have a very in-depth knowledge of soil types and soil fertilities and qualities of soils that we've seen working around different areas. That leads into a lot of R&D projects, and again, Enterprise Ireland are supporting us on those and have done over the years on all of the new projects that we do. Some of the new, well, two of the new products we have for next season, some of these have already been seen out and about a little bit. These two kind of were born out of R&D projects that we've had this year. So the first one, you see the large picture on the left, is this narrow film laying machine. So basically it's the 4-row machine. So classically we would have had 2 lines of film. Now we have 4 lines of film. So what we're doing this is we're reducing the amount of film being used per hectare. For a couple of reasons, I suppose. It's the way the future is going for sustainability of farming and so on. We'd be able to sow companion crops with this. So we've trials this year done sowing grass seed at the same time of planting. So we're planting the maize crop under the film to protect it from the frost and so on, sowing the grass seed in the center then for crop cover and soil erosion in the future. Also experimenting with bean crops and pea crops, where we'd plant the beans or the peas in the center. So we have companion crops where you'll have a high protein bean crop mixed then with the forage crop of maize then for the winter time for the feeding. That then coupled with different types of herbicide uses, so we can use less herbicide under the film and allow an overspraying easier afterwards. The project's 3 years old. It was mainly designed for the Canadian market for the larger fields. So they have fields that are maybe 1.5 kilometers long, big open expansive areas. And this narrow film then was designed to have a lower wind shear, so we don't have as much wind for issues with blow off. Also, we can use a minimum till with this one. Because we're burying less film left and right with the machine, we can go to a more of a min-till type situation, or possibly no-till is the next generation of this. So we're moving that direction with this newer technology and newer films. Again, it's all born out of 3D drawing. Everything's done on 3-dimensional drawing, so the machine is almost built before it's built. It saves a lot of downtime, and it means we can do a lot of out-of-season work with the equipment. The other big project we have is the new bale trailer. So the new bale chaser, the CTS, so the collect, transport and stack. So it's the only one of its kind, working on a project with another Irish engineer who is collaborating on the project with us, but it's, say, under our roof. So basically we have to, as you've seen probably in the videos of this in the past, we can collect the bales, stack 16 of them inside in the trailer, and then tip up 8 at a time so we can stack them. Really, I suppose it's another necessity, you know, and they say the invention is the mother of all necessity, or inventions of it all. So in that respect, guys have a big issue trying to get bales from the field as quick as they can. And I suppose talking to customers and talking to other people out there, that there's a good niche in the market for this sort of equipment. We've had inquiries only the last couple of weeks again since we started to release pictures of it from places like North America and Chile. Our dealers down there are quite anxious about it. They want to get one for the season. A lot of bale has been made, and it's what they want to do is get the bales from the field to the yard or the collection point as quick as possible, and with as little amount as handling, and stack them with little as amount as effort as they can. So this is a new trailer that's kind of born out of that again, and it's something that we're looking forward to very much this year. And we're going to have 2 demo units this year working around. It's fully automated using Danfoss controllers. So basically the driver just has to drive up the bale and push the button, and it loads itself automatically. It knows where there's a bale and not a bale in the trailer, so it knows when to stack it up or push the bales back to the next section. So in that respect, it's really designed for high output and on the go stacking and packing the bales into the trailer as it works. And network and staff. This is, I suppose, more important now with the way the COVID situation has been over the last year and a half. Really, I suppose it affected us last spring because we couldn't travel, and 80% of our turnover comes from exports. So we have to travel a lot. We have a lot of customers overseas. So it's important, I suppose, that anywhere we go with new equipment and meeting new customers, that we go and we're there in person. And agriculture is a very boots on the ground sort of business. You can do a lot of Zoom and on the phone calls, but to the end user on the ground, you have to be there in the field on the day to see how it goes. So for us, I suppose it's a very busy time of the year, the springtime coming off the back of it now. So we'd have a lot of guys that would travel as far away as China. A lot of the trade shows, again, have been put on hold. So we're looking forward to getting back to those, to meeting the customers and so on. And basically, probably 25 or 35% of our staff could be out of the country at any one time in the springtime, just for the simple fact that we have guys on the ground doing the work. So that's a big part of our business, is the networking and the staff we have, and the training of the staff for these sort of projects to be able to do these and carry them out in different parts of the world with different types of languages also been in effect. This is a typical little trial unit we have, a small tractor with a small test unit where we go doing the trial work in different parts, or developing new equipment, or testing in different field types, different equipment. I suppose one of the big questions that's always on people's mind is, going forward, what's going to be the future of farming? And I suppose it's something, as a very heavy R&D company, that we're very kind of pushy towards. It's something that we're always constantly looking and seeing. We mightn't always be in control of what direction we want to go, whether that be for regulation purposes, or any of the new issues coming up with the CAP reforms in Europe and so on, and the future of farming that way. I suppose for us, in our little space of technology, we're using the film and growing crops a lot. We see more and more of this type of unit being fitted to machines in the future, where we're injecting the liquid fertilizer down beside the plant. So really, I suppose, localizing the fertilizer usage, maximizing the benefit return from it. A lot more adaptations of our standard machine to use granular liquid fertilizer, whether it's microgranular, trace element placing, things like this, you know. A lot more automation and GPS being worked. A lot of our customers now will run GPS on the machine. We're moving more into section control. Some ISOBUS technology is creeping its way in to what we have, simply due to the fact that customers are asking for it more and more. So we see a lot more of this kind of technology going on. Same again, it's just the amount of technology and information you can get back out of your planter, and with the newer, with sensors and with moisture depth sensors, so we can adjust maybe in the future depth of planting going forward into the moisture level. So as it varies across the field, we can get this sort of technology in-house into the equipment that adjusts seed depth, especially to get maximum germination at the right time. Like I spoke about earlier, developing new film laying techniques to go into a pure no-till situation. And this is a common sight in parts of North America where they don't plow or cultivate the top layer of soil, simply due to the fact that they haven't time in the spring. It's a very heavy workload time of the year, and they want to get in plant in that small window and get it done and dusted in that time frame when the weather is correct. So we see a lot more of this sort of, in the future, strip tilling possibly, or working into this min-till type situation. So again, developing film layers and developing film types to be able to withstand this kind of harsh environment, as we'd call it, for film laying. This is a classical example picture from Canada. Text message was from him, thank God for GPS, because he's inside in the field, 1.5 kilometers long, and you can see on the left here where the last rows of film were. So since he drove down and came back up, the snow has covered it. So that's typical for us in the springtime. You get these snow showers in parts of Northern Europe that you just plant through, because, you know, tomorrow it'll be 12 degrees and the snow will melt away and the season is short, they need to plant. So that's a typical picture we get. Then you have the newer type machines that I spoke about earlier, the narrow film layers. Again, so we can grow maybe companion crops, grass seed, better, let's say, issues with water and soil erosion, that we can, let's say, minimize that with cover crops here between the different rows of maize, rather than having the one bigger sheet we had in the past. And really, I suppose, just being ready going forward to what could happen or what might happen with farming in the future. And it's an important thing to know, you know, just because their grandfathers did it that way doesn't mean it's still the right way or the best way to do it. So we have to be kind of changing and adapting all the time, right across the farming sector, not just in our section of business, but all across that farming sector. And going forward as a company, so I suppose we were originally based here in the farmyard. You can see in the top of the picture here. So basically we were milking dairy cows here till 12 years ago. Now we have beef cattle. So we were based fully here in the farmyard, converted over to buildings, and had a porta cabins and had 40 staff working out this system. Then in 2018, then we built the first building here at the bottom of the picture. So that was our Extruder Building for making the mulch film. And then we started building this in 2018 the newer building. We moved into this one in October 2019. So there's 27,000 square feet in this, and there's 10,000 square feet in this. So we never thought we'd fill it, but the way things are at the moment, it's fairly full and fairly busy production site at the moment internally. So the extruder building, we have 2 extruders in here. One extruder here on the left was the first one, and this was the second one that we installed middle last year. So it's doubled our capacity at home here. We have outside sourcing of production also, but still there's probably 30% of production now is done in-house in our own facility. The rest of the production is subcontracted out to 2 other companies we work with and have done for several years. But because we were getting more bespoke types of orders and bespoke specialized films for certain crops and certain things, we had to have our own in-house production because it took too long to get it done in the past. So it's quite a big investment for us. That stage going back 3 years ago, but was necessary for the continuation of how we wanted to do with the business and what direction we wanted to go with it. Then in 2019, we moved into the production building. So it's a full under one roof, a lot more access with overhead cranes, a lot more access with availability to the workers to work on their own, which was good, I suppose, the way COVID came. So every guy has his own area, responsibility for his own section of production. So basically we have a U-shaped system for production, steel. We still get all our laser cut parts done outside. We have our own plasma for prototype work, but really the economics of it still justify us subcontracting that business out. All the welding, all the painting, all the assembly is done in-house, and all the servicing and so on is done that way as well. So there's 27,000 square feet in the building, which is it's nice to have. It gives us a bit more room than we had in the past, but still it's a busy area, and we're glad to have it. And the way we've progressed in the last 2 years with orders and so on. So I noticed some students also watching in today, I suppose, and going through the different things that you probably hear 50 million times a week about the future and jobs in the business. I suppose agriculture is I suppose needed. You've seen that in the last 18 months with COVID, how agriculture still is a very prominent business and how it's still there and required. You have to love your work, I suppose. That's the first thing. And I suppose it's important that you understand what section of the agricultural business you want to be in, whether it be agronomy, mechanical engineering, on farm, contracting work, and how you need it. And I suppose the biggest thing that I always see with CVs and people coming in is to have as much work experience as you have. It can be difficult. It can be hard these days to get experience with some of the bigger equipment that's out there. But it's something that's very important to try and get as much experience as you can, even if you have to work for free half the time. Just try and get it and build it up, because it's worth a lot more in the long run, that experience, than just doing the same thing day in, day out over time, you know. And practical knowledge, you know, there's no substitute for common sense. And it's something that is very, very important in any job or any aspect of life, is a bit of common knowledge. And that links into practical knowledge and how you go about your day's work, you know. I suppose in trying to attend as many things as you can, like today. The more things you see today, the more people you know in the business, the more things you've seen what people speak about, you know. I often kind of give the analogy to people: God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. So therefore you should listen twice as much as you speak. I think that's important for people who want to, let's say, progress in life, that to try and listen and learn as much as you can through your 2 ears, rather than giving your opinion all the time. Because, you know, there's a lot of other people there with just as good of an opinion as you, or maybe better or more experience, and you should draw off them as much as possible, and that you then can speak what really should be the best going forward, you know. Okay, and that's kind of basically it. So I'm not sure what way you want through the questions, Chris, or how you want to lay them out with people texting them in.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you very much, Rob. That was exceptionally informative, and it gave us a beautiful snapshot of what you do. Okay, and visually it was very good. I'll throw questions open to the floor there. If anybody has any questions, I suppose just to give you some seed for thought, jobs would be the first one. You know, are you recruiting? And that would be maybe a question I'll throw out there.
We are. I have 2 guys coming this summer. One of them, I suppose, is working on one of the new R&D projects with us. He has some experience in that project, so he's starting in June with us. We have taken on 2 other students this year. One of them was finishing college, and another guy is doing work placement. So we have guys coming in. I suppose there's always something to do. And we always have, let's say, something opens always here. And the way things are going, we have a lot more bespoke projects. So it's very easy for guys to come and try and get experience on new projects because it's happening all the time, you know. And passport and travel, you know. Even with COVID, we're trying to get guys out on the road. So it's young guys want to travel a bit, so we have plenty of that in the house.
Okay, so we have a question there from Niall, and he's asked, do you build machines in-house to order for stock as well?
Yeah, yes and no. I suppose because we're so seasonal with our business, the springtime comes in the spring, we have to make a judgment call probably in July, maybe August time to say, okay, how many units? And we have a nice complex Excel data sheet that we sit down in front of the big TV with, about 6 of us, and say how many hours it'll take to make this, this, and this. And what we've tried to do over the years for our own sake was try and make things as sectional as possible. So the same cedar unit will work on a 2-row, a 4-row, a 6-row, an 8-row. Or the same meter unit will work on a 2-row, a 4-row, a 6-row, an 8-row. So what we can do is we can stock order parts and probably justify 60% of what we need to make. Another 40% of those machines then we can change at a later date to try and make a 2-row or more 4-rows or more 6 rows with fertilizer and things. But it's always hard. You never know for sure. And you know, we try and give discounts even in December to customers to try and order early, especially with the export market and transport times, especially the last 2 years just going crazy. So we try and encourage people to order early, but it's 50-50 probably. 50% is stock and 50% is an order, specialized.
Okay, so we've a question there from Sean, and Sean says, when you're planting the secondary crop with the maize, is the idea that the grass crop will take over in the winter, and would you get a grazing out of it before sowing?
Yes, that is the plan, I suppose. In countries, again, from traveling and looking at other countries' experience, in Denmark, there's a lot of light sandy soil. It's quite an open, flat country, and they've had issues in the past where soil erosion is starting to play a bit more prominent for them with their maize crops. And maize is growing there because it's a large crop. So legally, I think more than 60% of the maize grown in Denmark has to have a grass cover crop grown in it, so that to help with soil erosion. Then they try and use that for grazing, but mainly for nutrients. So most customers will use it for nutrient capturing and cover cropping then for less weed issues or to allow better trafficability in the wintertime. I have customers in Holland who have to have their permanent grass cover crop in by the 30th of September. So they use maize under film, they harvest it completely and then plant the grass cover crop then for the whole winter. So there's variations, but probably 10% we would expect to use it for grazing. The other 90% will use the grass cover for moisture and weed control and trafficability then in the wintertime for harvest.
Niall has another question there. How do you keep ahead of the competition?
Have a good rear view mirror. You know, that's what you do. I don't like looking on my windscreen at the competition. For us, the old saying, if it isn't broke, don't fix it, doesn't work for us. We're always saying, if it isn't broke, how can it break? And let's try and stop it of breaking. So we're always tinkering with something. And that goes back to the contracting days. When we were contracting, we were always tinkering or modifying some machine. So much so that Crone used to send us mowers every year in the early days with farmhand to come over and have a fiddle and check and move. And, you know, we were one of the first ones with the big M2 in the country when we had it, and we went through that and made changes with them. And so we were always tinkering, and it's lived into the engineering business, but just, I don't know, a family business and just always tinkering. Like any good farmer out there, he's always looking at his own farm and modifying things to suit his way of work. And we were just doing the same on an agricultural manufacturing scale. That's what we were doing.
Very good. Any other questions there from the floor? Yes. Valentine, okay, I'm interested in CAD design. Would the team have openings in this role in the nearest future?
We could have a role coming up. I have one guy that's on work placement at the moment that is going back to college in September. So I suppose it could happen. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't, it's a bit vain thing to say, but we're a victim of our own success, but the amount of requests that have come in for other types of equipment in the last couple of months due to the fact they've started to see bespoke machinery we've made. So we've more and more guys coming in, and unfortunately, to put welders outside welding and cutting up machines to make it work doesn't work. You need drawings to be done. You need guys who are proficient at drawing. And, you know, I keep telling the guys in the office, there's a lot of guys after them. They can draw it, no problem, but they have to think of the guy who has to weld it, the guy has to paint it, and the guys that put it together. So, you know, there's always a need for guys in the drawing office, especially to spend some practical time as well on the floor. So we'd always, with guys who would come into the business, they would be on the floor as much as in the office at the start to understand the principles and the basic things about why a 30mm pin is too small and why a 50 is overkill, you know. And that comes with practical experience, which he would prefer guys to learn, you know. You learn from your mistakes, not from your wins, because if you win, you think, well, it was okay. When you lose something, you have to think about why you lost, and then you have to disseminate and say, well, why did the pin break? And, you know, for simple analogies. But yeah, there's it's important, you know.
Very good. Another question from Niall there. Do you have ISO 9001 quality management certification or accreditation?
No. And I suppose it's something that we found very hard when we looked at originally in the farm buildings, because the amount of paperwork that goes with that. There's nearly more paperwork for that than it was actually on the factory floor to do. But now that we're in the new building, it's something we're considering, simply due to the fact that as we progress into more export markets and with new customers, and I suppose as we start to move into the larger customers, we have some big orders from like North Africa and so on with large commercial entities, and they look for these sort of things. So it's something that we didn't consider before, but I suppose 6 months ago we started looking at it more serious now that we're in the new premises.
Very good. Okay, so another question there from Valentine. What design software does the design team use? Is it Inventor?
It's Inventor we use, I suppose, and it was just the luck of the draw at the time. I looked at SolidWorks, I looked at Inventor. I just found that Inventor was more friendly maybe at the early stages for us. So we stayed with Inventor, and from that then we have the Vault system where we can check out drawings from the central server. So you could have two guys working on the same machine at the same time, which needs to be done as machines get a bit more complex, or you have one of the engineers that had designed something on a previous machine and we need him to modify it to suit a new one. Whereas it could be the same as the punch machine on another machine. So you could have two engineers working on the same project. I just liked the Vault and the Inventor system compared to SolidWorks at the time when we chose it, 8 years ago, I suppose now we're using it.
Yeah, and there's just a comment there from Niall. Niall says, excellent presentation. Thank you very much. And I think that would go from all of us here. I think it was spot on. It hit the spot exactly well. Thank you very much, Robert, for your time. I just one other maybe quick question I have. I presume all the information and details would be up on your website, and you also have a Facebook page.
Yep, Facebook, I suppose. It's I wouldn't say it's gone a bit beyond me, but yeah, Facebook, I suppose, is getting more popular. It's quicker.
Yeah.
We have a good bit of stuff on the web page. We've a new website opened. We kind of didn't get time to finish it fully because I suppose it's been busy, but we're loading up stuff constantly on the web page. But Twitter as well, I suppose a lot of the business end type units are using Twitter, and the younger, it's hard to say the younger generation are still using Facebook, but normally it's the other way around. And we're on Instagram and TikTok, of course, as well. That's buzzing around as well. So yeah, you'd see up on top of that. I suppose it's one way of getting the business out there, especially with no open days, you know, like with Plong Match, maybe under a bit of a suspicion, maybe you see IAgrE Technica moved out until next year now. We're going to that, and Llama was cancelled this year. That's been pushed out to next January, and hopefully the FTMTA show can go ahead next February as we all hope. So it'll be busy January, February, March next year with exhibitions, but I think it's kind of needed. Guys like to, I suppose, kick the tires, as we say. So it's just nice to be able to try and do something now while we can in the midterm with this online technology that seems to be part of our daily lives at the moment. So thanks for your attention on the afternoon as well. Yeah,
and like what you emphasized there, you know, there's nothing like the face-to-face in due course, you know. I mean, while remote, I suppose, you know, technology can support, at the end of the day, the business of farming is very face-to-face, and you really can't underestimate that enough. So thanks again, Rob, much appreciated, especially on behalf of the Institute of agricultural engineers. It'll be up on their website as well. IAgrE.org in due course as in their archives, okay, for anybody who may not have got the opportunity to see this today. So all the best to everybody, and we'll talk again soon. Take care, everyone.